continue to expand the program. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say, and excuse me, Zeke and myself and Greg and a whole group of us we're kind of eager to keep things rolling here with the class. Of course, I think the most important thing I think that needs to be stated is I desperately need a new boat. So I bought my ticket today, and it'd be great if you could convince everybody just to step out of the way so I could get my new boat. That would be great.
I will use, we want your money, but forget to put it in the jar. In case, in the interest of full disclosure, I've turned the recorder on so we can share that. So why don't we go ahead and begin, because it's past time, and the goal here, anyway, hopefully, the atmosphere I want to set with this is normally we'd want to do this meeting kind of informally in a happy hour after sailing. So hopefully everybody has their libation of sort. I have mine. If you notice, I have the appropriate cup for it, or as my wife says, I'm drinking from a sacred chalice. And I noticed Carol was on there. I'm wearing an ancient shirt from North Americans longer ago than I wish to admit to. So let's just say, it still fits, but I'm not going to tell you what year it is, but I will tell you where it came from. So that being said, let me end that and go to the other part. And I appreciate you guys joining us. I can see everybody's smiling face. I see Eric's there. Goal here is, I have a PowerPoint I'm going to share with you, is to get everybody thinking about membership. It's always critical for any organization because it really means revenue. And it's one of those things, and that's why I'm glad Brian joined us and both Eric joined us. It's one of those things, some good solutions and some not good solutions, and what works for one group may not work for another one. So what I want to do is share with you folks kind of some thoughts I have, and granted, these are my thoughts and only my thoughts, which means it's a place to start our discussion from. And if some of the things I share with you guys, you think is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, have I got some winners for you on that. So, so that's what we want to do. My goal here is to make this approximately an hour or so, unless we decide we are doing so good that we can go further. But you know how this works. If you go much more than an hour, you're not doing anybody any good. That's what we want to accomplish. I wouldn't try to make this as informal as possible. The only thing I've really learned about these webinars is just like in a real meeting, if you try to talk over each other, it just doesn't work well. So I've left the mute off, and I won't yield the iron hand of the gavel with the unmute button. That certainly is one way to enforce Robert's rules. But let's make this a discussion. More importantly, I think what will happen is you'll think about it, and if your brain works like mine in the shower, you'll go, oh, yeah, I wish I thought about that. So hopefully this is a beginning of a process. And hopefully what happens here is Eric and Brian and Diane and others who've worried about this problem can share what they've learned. And it's one of those things. In fact, let's go back to this. This is what we're going to talk about here. And I chose this guy. If you remember your Greek mythology, Sisyphus, he was a guy who made some god mad. I forget the exact story. And he was sentenced to spend eternity taking the boulder to the top of the mountain and then do the next thing the other day. Those of you whose lives are driven, say, by sales quotas or financial quotas, you know how this works too. You're a hero on the 31st of the month, and then, Brian, in your business, then you go back to zero, and for second of the month, your boss is already screaming at you, how many things have you sold? Hero to zero. So we all have that, and this is also that. So, What I'm going to share with you guys is probably not necessarily new. It's not necessarily unique. I do want us to think about it. The kind of bottom point I want us to think about is I have this idea, and Eric certainly proven this is correct, is well as others who've held this position, real action occurs at the individual level and the fleet level. So what I want us to start thinking about is what can the fleets do? And from the chair I'm sitting in, what can the executive committee do to make their job easier? So that's where my thought process is going with this. Okay. What I did here, and Diane, I'm going to plug yours in a minute, so I'll go on from there. What I did is put together some data. Being an economist, can't help but put some data together. And here's kind of your punchline. You look at our active members, which is the thought about. If you look at that trend before I drew all over it, we're basically flat since 2015. Not a bad thing, but the question I want to pose to us, can we make that better? And more importantly, I didn't bring this here. If you look back to what everybody thinks about is glory days of sailing, the world has changed. And here was a wake-up number for me. Right there. In 5 years, we're down 17%. Now, using my keen economic skills says that cannot continue. So what we're going to do is talk about why that is and what that is. But Diane, however, properly pointed out, she does have some good news if you look to this box right here, the year to date, where we are. That's not baked into that, but she shared with us we've had 54 renewals since they started.
Since March 1st, and it's 55 now.
55. And I did this based on the March report, so that's not baked into that. So that thing I was worried about is not as bad as I thought it was. But what is important, look to, we'll go back to meditation. I'm getting good at this. Look to see where we were there versus where we were there. I'm sure, certainly Brian has seen this. There are some classes that would be happy with that. Maybe me being me is, well, I'm okay with it, but the question I'm posing to us, how do we make that better? So just keep that in mind. Maybe I'm being ambitious, but you got to start with ambition and then you work your way down from there. Okay, continuing forward. Next thing I did is kind of ask the question, where is our membership? And you can see here, and my buddy Mike pointed out, you really don't want to use heat maps because that looks like the virus. So I changed it to blue because that wasn't as bad. Then I got creative and thought, maybe I can figure out how to make this to Douglas Staunton. And it turns out you can do that in Excel, but you can't do that in the mapping program. So this I found interesting. It's where are our members? Where are or if this was a business meeting, and it is in a sense, I'd be asking the question, where are our customers? And what you would see if I would do this correctly is, like I say, third eye. If I hit the right button, or look to Texas, I have no doubts that's Eric driving that one. And I see I misspelled Carolinas. You know how this works. It's always, you always see these as you come through it. But this is interesting to kind of see where our folks are. So what you kind of conclude here is our folks are roughly on the eastern seaboard. And if you did one of those center of gravity things, probably conclude they were somewhere about there, and then you think a little level deeper, I'll bet that's Deep Creek. But anyway, you get the idea, and it's important to think about that. And it's also important as we think about national regattas and things like that. Where is our membership? I don't beat what we found when doing the same analysis, getting ready for the wife husband. We found like 60% of the class was within 500 miles, and it looks like I just got some nasty bandwidth notice. Well, and the answer is, yeah, you're taxing a home network for things it's not supposed to do. But anyway, all right, this is the one I really want us to think about. What we did here is, this is looking at membership by tenure. In other words, what I did, I took the data that Courtney provided us and looked at the join dates and see how long we've had members. And at first, I was like, okay, that's not so bad. Then I went a step further. Here's what I discovered. Once you reach, about 30 plus years in the database, we don't have a join date for you. And you're missing 211 members. So then just for giggles, I picked on Larry. I said, when did you join? And he was out there longer than you could think. And I would suspect, as I recall correctly, Bill, you hit that category, and a bunch of others who've been at this quite a while don't show. End result there, see that area I circled? Probably have more members in that category than I thought. If I did a wild guess, I'd take all 200 of those and dump them into at 30. The 100 is nothing mysterious other than I didn't want to break up 50, 40, 50, so it's everybody else. What you take away from that is you got two kind of problems. How do you keep the new guys on board, given demographics are what they are? What do we do when guys like me cruise off in the sunset? So I think it's useful to think about this, and I guess most of us don't want to admit we're not quite as young as we once were. Okay, now here's a important thing I want you guys to think about, and we've all seen this, and this was a fairly I don't want to say blockbuster, I don't want to say earth-shattering, significant work by this gentleman here, Robert Putnam. If I remember correctly, he's a sociologist at Harvard, and he wrote this book called Bowling Alone. And the upshot of it is that the baby boom, which I'm at the tail end, some of our membership is right at it, is maturing. More important takeaway from that is the participation in a lot of, say, traditional sports activities, put churches in that, has declined. If I were giving this same talk to, say, St. Something's Church, pick your favorite place, you'd probably see there are a lot more gray heads there and there's something else, as well as membership has declined. Take a look at bullet number 3. Multi-generational activities have declined. I will raise my hand. I learned how to sail with my father. Bill, I know Melody sailed with her father, correct?
Right, correct.
Brian, you're second generation, right? I'm assuming that's a yes. But think about it, a lot of us came. I know the Claypools came at it from their parents. So a lot of us got attracted.
Greg is second generation too. His father was,
a member.
Yeah, and our first boat was his boat.
Yeah, and if Debbie's on there, she sailed with her father, and that's how I knew her longer than I wish to admit to. So that while that is down, that is a strength we have. Now, here's what I want you to. I have source here, but here's what I want you to ponder here is. You can sit here and look at a trend and get depressed, or you can figure out. I use the word defied. And some organizations and companies have figured that out. And what I'm going to challenge, by the way, I don't know the answer here. I do know. I think I know the question, but not knowing that. So think about when Debbie will chime in on this. In fact, some of you may have saw the videos from Dave Batchelor's daughter. It was not unusual to have 25 hit the line for a club race with no club, meaning it was a park. Something's changed. Now they're probably lucky if they get 25. Now, what you may happen is, given where we are, this may change. Anyway, something to ponder. Now, here seems to be a common thread. I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about this, but here's what I want us to think about. When a day is done, we can say all day, we like to go sailing because we're outside and it's fun and all that sort of stuff. And I don't dismiss that for a moment. But this is from a guy who won the J24 Nationals. Brian, is he one of your guys, or I forget? Yeah, he does. He's got North on there, so it's probably some guy you guys know. But the point there is, well, look to this line right here. And while I hate to use, I think it's overused. Here's what I want you to think about. There's something unique about sailing. There's something unique in this part of the world about going to deer camp and all those things. So what I'm challenging us to think about, and by the way, I don't know the answer, but I'm challenging us to think through it and see if there's an answer here, is that I would commend this book to you guys if you haven't already run across it, by a fellow named Nick Hayes, called Saving Sailing. And Nick's quite an interesting guy. He's a market researcher / strategist by profession, and he's a very avid sailor. And he basically wrote this book. So if you haven't read his book, I would encourage you to think about it. But what's unique about the way Nick approached the problem is it's one thing to look at the trends. It's another thing to figure out how to adapt and thrive. To let you know a little bit about Nick, he's spoken at a bunch of sailing functions. I think he's at about 200 plus. We had him come to Jackson 5 years ago to help us think about how to work through this problem. And he's probably one of the, like most people who sail, he's probably one of the more interesting people you ever want to meet. He stayed at my house. I think, Brian, you did that. And I think we solved every problem we could think of. I can't remember, Brian, if you went to the trading post with me, but I took him to the trading post, so you get the idea. If you don't know what the trading post is, think about hunts in Panama City, but more rustic. Redneck Chic is probably... Anyway, I'm in correspondence with him, and we're trying to see if he will do his presentation for our group. If we can pull it off, I think you'll get something from it. I know he helped us think through things, but anyway, look through that. You can get his book. It may not be in print because he sold the last ones he had when he was here, but you can get it on Amazon. And also look to what the point Nick is trying to bring up, and he look at of course skill is look at this final paragraph. If you look at that, there's something to that. And he's very big on the multi-generational thing. I don't know whether you've been in Milwaukee, but there's a very active community sailing center there. For those who went to Newport, it's kind of a variation on that same model. And those in New Orleans is one emerging. And you pick your favorite place, those kind of things seem to emerging. And what's interesting, what Nick will tell you is, not the traditional yacht club demographic, which is a variation of going to country club. It's typically a younger audience. It's not unusual to have single moms with children who wanting something to do to get their kids off the screen that they can do together. So there's some successes there. I don't know where Charles Buffington is here, but we the foundation just did a grant to the Baltimore Community Sailing Center, and they want to use Flying Scots for their program. So I think that's kind of the formula that Nick is pointing to, and hopefully he can spend some time with us because he's a fun guy, very thoughtful guy, and he's has some interesting insights. And if we can't get him, at least read his book, and we'll have hopefully we'll have virtual happy hour and talk about it. So anyway, that's something to think about. Okay, now here's what I want to challenge us to think about. Why do we sail Flying Scots? We've all endured the taunts, the flying squat or, all the things we do. But when the day is done, it's the boat, but it's something else. And what I want us to think about is, what is that something else? I don't know how to articulate that. That's why I want you guys to do it. What is that something else? I was struck by these couple of pictures, and there are others I can share. And like I said, the whole purpose of this is to more or less get us thinking. Look at this group. This was from the George Washington Regatta, and I'm guessing if you're dressed like this in Florida, February, it was cold. And as best I can tell, that's a family group. And as also as best I can tell, they seem pretty happy with themselves. And look, this is a bunch of kids from our first sale event here. So what I'm challenging us to think about here is, what's special about our group, our class, our boat? It's probably the confluence of the things. So, and by the way, I don't know the answer. I've recruited my wife to make us a snappy brochure with pictures and words. And she was honest with me, said, I can certainly make the brochure pretty. I don't know the words. So I need some help. And there's probably something neat. But anyway, I'm challenging us to think about, why do we do this? Why do we keep coming back? Greg has probably been doing this stuff about as long as I have. And there must be something to it. Debbie's been doing that long. Eric, I suspect you've been doing this since you've been knee-high to proverbial grasshopper. Like I said, I don't know the answers, but I'm challenging us to think through what that is. And it's a very unique group, and I don't sound like an old guy here. Way back when we were sailing at Carolina Sailing Club on Saddle White Point, and it was, and my father would say, you're going to appreciate this when you grow up in a way that you did not now. How can you do it? We came in the middle of the pack, and why are you happy? And my tail's between my legs. So, you know how it works. Sometimes you don't understand what you were being told. So, but there's something special there. The other thing, look to our second bullet. Look at our tenure. What seems to happen, once we get them hooked, they stay hooked. And that's probably unique. But I suspect in a lot of classes, once they figure out sailing is hard, drop away. One of the things Nick talks about is the importance of mentorship. And we probably all seen that when we started sailing, we screwed up. And somebody say, like Eric, say, come here, let me show you how it's done. So ponder all those things. I thought was quite powerful. This was in Sailing World, July 2nd. And this guy was talking about what the interlake meant to him. I know nothing about this boat other than it's a boat found somewhere in the Midwest. Because in the article, he talks about sailing at Sandusky. I think it's the same place we all went. But here's what I want you to ponder. And if I'm fumbling with this, you'll see that zoom in this look at this. More than a boat. Past and present. Think about your own personal stories. And anyway, when I share the link with that, you can go to that and see all that. He may have even mentioned Greg and fellow that name is Skip. No one always sails with Greg other than Brian. He's mentioned there too.
Think about Skip D-Ball.
Skip, or who's the other guy?
Skip D-Ball, Jeff Iber.
Yeah, he talks about Greg and Jeff competing against it. They were impressed when they beat him one day. So here's the challenge here. That's the story, I think. It's not that. Okay. So what I've done is, he may not be here, but everybody has tried to summarize what they see the Flying Scot Sailing Association does. And I took from I think this was President Vogler's departing column in Scots and Water, and what you see there, he summarized the kind of things that go into that, which I thought was a good list. However, I think there's something special. I think for those of you who've ever had any sales training, not me, but I've been around enough sales guys to know this. Think about the 30-second elevator speech. You know, if I'm trying to get somebody to do this, you generally have, whatever it may be, you generally have about 30 seconds to get their attention. And I think all these things, which is what we traditionally think about, are great. But I think what we need, or at least I don't know how to do, you guys can probably tell us how to do this, is, I used Zoom the other night, now I'm using this, is how do we get the, by the way, I like this, and as Bruce and I were talking, how do we get the sizzle there? I don't know what that is. What I'll say, watch some of the ads you see for various things. Somehow find a way to capture the tangible, which is what Bill has done a really good job of, and the intangible. There's a Lincoln commercial that talks about home and security. It seems to be quite effective. Unfortunately, it got shelved, but it's something I've gotten a preview because of the Mrs. Coldwell Banker has a very nifty commercial campaign that picks up on that theme. The fact that we didn't play basketball is we didn't get to see this, but that's the idea. Something softer, and like I say, I may be not had enough of my drink, but you get the idea. And Eric had a good idea. He's talked about his father has struggled to say, why should I join the class? And we get a little bit of pushback. Those of us who are not trained on that don't know how to respond. I had a friend who was very good at sales. He used to say, I like objections, because that means then I can start my job. I can start selling. So if you think about the way they do this in the corporate world, the really, really good guy always find a way to succeed. Really, really bad guy, you can't help him. How do you take that middle of the pack, move them up? And the way we did it, we create sales briefs and describe the benefits and that sort of stuff. So anyway, like I said, this is very much a work in progress. I'm looking for help from you guys. I don't expect an answer today, but I think they're blending here. Here's my poor attempt to do this. This is, look at some of the things, and Michelle properly pointed out this summary of things was still too wordy. It's another way: community, support, promote, participate, connect. I think the bottom one, the winner. And you can, if you look at this picture or these two pictures, I think they capture two of the things. Look at this one. That looks pretty darn exciting. Winds come up, they're coming down at the mark. Ryan here is probably figuring out, I sure hope I get through this before these guys in the spinnakers come down on me. If you look at this one, this is in Newport. While this is a motley looking crew, they do look like they are having a good time. If some of you are friends with Dave Rink on Facebook, you'll see some interesting pictures that he had with his daughter sailing. Joe Brake, most you guys know him. He had some interesting pictures with his family sailing. So I think this is the idea. In marketing, they talk about the value proposition. And here's what I want us to ponder. Think about if I'm selling a piece of computer hardware. Or let's do this. I'm showing you an iPhone. When the day is done, you don't really give a flip what the processor is, how many gigs of storage it is, all the other things that people care about. You're really trying to answer the question, how does that thing make my life better? Does it solve a problem with me? Some of you would argue maybe it doesn't solve a problem for you because it makes problems go. So ponder that. What I think to help Eric out, we can talk about measurement standards in a magazine and all that stuff. But what we really have to demonstrate to our prospective members, as well as every member that ever comes up, since they make a purchase decision every year, what about being a member at FSA makes their life better? And that's probably even more pronounced now for a couple of reasons. Before I put this together, I would have said there are a variety of ways you can go spend your recreational dollars. If I put it on my other hat and talked about economic, it's going to be a rough ride for a while. And that doesn't mean people don't want to recreate, but they want to do things they perceive that's high value. And they may not spend $10,000 to go on a family cruise in the Greek islands, but sailing around with Eric on his little nuclear mud pile. What do you call it, mud pole, Eric? Your lake, there's nothing glamorous about it, right?
There's nothing glamorous about it. No.
But there's something about it, that could, while that is counterintuitive, that could work to our favor. So I'm encouraging us to think through that. Let's see what else. The other thing I want us to think about, as I said, I want us to think about personal connection. Some of it, we're all guilty of this. We're all guilty of sending an email and thinking that's going to make things work. And I think Diane has pointed this out, is, people just want to be asked to do stuff. And what you're seeing here is, you talk to folks who do sales training, they talk about relationships matter. What I'm going to share with you is, this is a United Airlines commercial from 1983. And some of you may remember the commercial once you see it. Basically what happened is, this company had lost touch with his customer and forgot the personal touch. So, assuming this works like it did in practice, let's see how it works.
I got a phone call this morning from one of our oldest customers. He fired us. After 20 years, he fired us. Said he didn't know us anymore. I think I know why. We used to do business with a handshake, face to face. Now it's a phone call and a fax. Get back to you later. With another fax, probably. Well, folks, something's got to change. That's why we're going to set out for a little face-to-face chat with every customer we have.
But Ben, that's got to be over 200 cities.
I don't care. Thanks.
If you're the kind of business that still believes personal service deserves a lot more than lip service, welcome to United. That's the way we've been doing business for over 60 years.
Ben, where are you going? To visit that old friend who fired us this morning.
United. Come fly the friendly skies.
Okay, some of you may remember that commercial. At the time, I thought it was darn effective. And I go, wait a minute, I'm in the fax selling business. So here's what I want to challenge us. To the fleet captains and district governors out there, it's real easy to send an email, say renew, and then go delete. It's much harder if Eric picks up the phone and calls one of his members, say, hey, we know, did you rejoin the FSA? So I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And it's much harder to tell Eric in person no than it is. So one of the thoughts I've had is I would encourage folks to reach, like the old AT&T, they see it trained me well, the old AT&T commercial, to reach out to your membership. Perhaps even more appreciated right now, since nobody gets to go sailing, aside from what we did with our driveway happy hours with everybody 6 feet apart. We don't get to keep up with those folks. And in this part of the world, it's very frustrating because you probably have 1.5 to 2 months is really good sailing. And Eric, you're probably about falling out where you can do this. in Brian's part of the world, it's probably falling out to the point you can go do that. But I think people want to feel connected. And your excuse these days is you can say, "Hey, I hadn't seen you since October. How you doing?" And that's probably a bit more effective technique than just an email. It's a little harder, takes a little more time, but it's actually kind of satisfying. So I would encourage folks to think those lines. In the Michelle's doing in her business, you can imagine no one wants to go into a strange house or go in and say, you know what her people are doing? They're calling all the clients, say, we're still trying to solve your problem. Keeping that relationship warm. By the way, this commercial, one of her guys, she swapped favors with to do a sales training. That's where I got this idea. So I'll give him credit for it. Bruce, he's in your part of the world. He's in Columbus. So. Okay. So here, what are we going to do about this? I chose this one is, as sailors, we recognize we can have the best race plan. I almost said battle plan. That's probably as good as any possible. And we got this whip. We got the current figured out. Got the wind velocity. We got where we wanted to. And the wind shifted, and all of a sudden we're on the wrong side of the line. And what you see is, and think about, say, what Brian and Greg do, and Jeff and all the others who are the champions. Yeah, they get growl for a second that their plan didn't work, and then they start working the problem. So where this is about all into my formal presentation. But what I'm going to do is we'll take a few minutes. What can we do? More importantly, what can I do? What you guys like? What you don't like? What do we need? What can we do outside? And where do we go from here? So I throw it open for discussions, or if you guys want to go get another drink, that too. But the purpose of this was not to say I had a solution. And if I did what I thought I wanted to achieve is, well, let's think about the problem, and here's some ingredients that go into the solution. So I turn the floor over to the group. Don't everybody talk at one time. If you do talk at one time, I have the power to mute you. So anybody have anything you want to add? Is this the dumbest thing you ever saw? Is this hopelessly naive? What did I get? What did we get right? What did we miss?
Well, I just jumping in. We have these conversations at our club locally all the time. We're fortunate in that we have a pretty robust club with 100 or so active members across 5 or 6 different fleets. We've done the same thing. We've gone through ambassadorship programs. We try to make new members feel like they are, extra involved by assigning them people. So yes, this is not a new conversation. One of the things I might throw out there in terms of, it's a purely revenue grab. If you're looking at trying to keep potential members active so you're not doing that, we allow credit card payments. We might want to consider allowing an auto renewal option. I know I would love it. I'm an active member and I try to make sure I pay my dues on time and not worry about it. But if we had an auto renewal where I could give a credit card number and just say, charge me next year, I wouldn't have to worry about it. My mother has Netflix. God love her. She's 80 years old. She hasn't probably watched a movie on Netflix in 10 years, but she has a Netflix renewal that automatically goes. And Netflix has her locked in right at this point until I can convince her to get rid of it. But sometimes something like that is an option, at least. Now it doesn't go towards the activity level, obviously, but it does at least keep them on the rolls, on the books, and gives us the opportunity to keep in contact with them. So,
the other advantage.
Bruce, can I just want to address that? So we did look into auto renewing, and there are some options that we have, but one of the problems is that we don't have a full-time staff to keep track of all of the credit card numbers of people, and companies like Netflix and BJ's, where I used to work, there's full-time staffs there making sure that the systems that they use with credit card numbers don't get hacked and don't have security issues. And we don't have a full-time staff, and JEE is not willing to keep track of everybody's. They've been told not to keep track of everybody's credit card numbers. So
And we've gone through the same discussions locally too, because our club has tried to do the same thing, and we have the same challenges, but we are still considering how can we potentially do it. So I don't know, it's just a thought to, spark some ideas and spark some conversation.
it is definitely something that we've looked into, and I just want to mention 2 more people tonight who bought raffle tickets joined. So they were new members. So that's kind of cool. Well, while we were on this meeting, 2 more people joined who bought raffle tickets.
You guys bite the year-to-date trend. And maybe to Bruce's point, I don't know the answer is, at the Jackson Yacht Club, we also elected not to touch credit cards with a 10-foot pole. But our website provider had somebody that could do that. So to Diane's point, we as the association should not manage that with a 10-foot pole. However, there may be some third parties that may be worth it. Maybe it costs you a little bit, maybe a little bit more in a PayPal transaction, and it's a cost benefit thing.
I have been looking into it, and there were a few that were lower cost, but I looked into their reputation, and it turned out that it wasn't worth going with them. But the ones that cost money, we can talk about this as an executive committee, whether we want to sue that and figure out how much are we really going to gain by auto renewing people versus the amount of money that we're going to spend. So I can, Bill, if you can put that on the next agenda for the executive committee, we can talk about that.
Yeah, we did. That's one of the things we discussed shortly after I took over. I raised that issue, and the cost value of what we were able to find at that point didn't seem to weigh out. But I still like the idea of it and wish we could come up with a way to do it. But I also don't want to take the risk of us certainly being in charge of people's credit cards, which would be could be very detrimental to us. So we have to keep looking for a solution to that. But it's a great idea, Bruce, that we have been looking into.
Hey, Diane, you looked at some company named Victor in the Ukraine, and you decided that wasn't a good idea? Victor and Ivan. You decided that was a bad idea.
So
one other comment I have, just from a local level, because being active here at Cowan and dealing with our local members, I struggle with getting my membership to travel. And that is something that we've been trying to grow, and we have enough regattas here in the Midwest, for God's sakes, that I would think I'd have more travelers. But part of the comments I hear, and that I think the board needs to sort of look at and address, is overweighing the comments I get from people that say, this is nice and I joined the Flying Scot class, but what does my membership really do for me? I'm not a member who travels. I'm not a member who really worries about, I bought a $2,000, $3,000 Flying Scot that when I go to resell it, somebody at Cowan Lake is going to rebuy it, or I'll sell it through the caveat emptor pages, and I know I'll get my money back. But what does the membership really do for the class member other than protect the value of their boat? And I think we struggle with answering that question of, yes, it does that, and it helps promote the class to keep it viable. But I do see the look in the people's eyes that just sort of say, yeah, but what does the class do for me at the local grassroots level? And I know we all struggle with that. But that's something I think the board really, if there's anything I think that goes towards, how do we encourage people to feel better about renewing that membership every year, that they're really seeing some value in that at the local level, not only at the traveling level, because again, they say, well, yeah, we see you go to the national events, or we see you go to the regional events or your district events, and obviously that's promoting that activity, but what does it do for me, the individual boat owner?
Yeah, and Bruce, I struggle with that too. I'm glad it wasn't just me and I missed it. And maybe that's the perpetual challenge here, because if I look at all you folks here, is I met you guys because we traveled someplace. But we forget the bulk of our membership doesn't. Traveling means I go across the lake, and we got to figure out how to, whatever the magic words are for those folks. By the way, I don't know what it is, but I raised the question, and maybe I won't figure it out, or maybe I like old Sisyphus, just pushing it up the hill. And okay, I'm glad I'm done with this, and then I can go worry about getting somebody to host the NAC. So, but anyway, I won't try. But I appreciate that. Anybody else have anything? Any other ideas appear in your mind?
Hey, Jim,
If you're still there, how do the other classes you've seen wrestle with it? What's good, what's not good?
I think Eric was about to weigh in, right?
thanks, Brian. Thanks, Jim.
Next, Brian.
I want to hear what Brian has to say, but I'll go. It's really hard for people to see the big picture when they're stuck in the little clubs and not venturing outside their areas. It's really, really challenging. There's no doubt about that. We have a little bit easier at Clinton Lake because Deb started traveling, then I started traveling, and we started getting everyone hooked on traveling because once they did it, they realized it was fun. And word of mouth spread, and people got to see the benefits of the community outside of our community that was actually having an impact on the Clinton Lake Sailing Association. In fact, it's been transformational. So we've had a little bit easier time in having people understand that community benefit. But even then, we just have people who are just think of it as like, what do I get back for my $35 or this and that? And the magazine, as great as it is, just isn't the best selling point as I would like it to be. So what we've done is we've done a couple of things that have been a little bit more creative. We've recognized that in our fleet, what they get is not so much me, but more so Ben and Deb. They get Fleet Captain Rod. They get Jim Colgrove. They get all these people who are willing to help them and develop. And there's that mentorship, and there's that coaching, and there's all these things that we've been doing as part of our fleet building that everyone markets as CLSA and not Fleet 135. So we were very, very crafty in that we marketed it as Fleet 135 and built our brand. And the Thistle Fleet captain hated it. I'll tell you that right now.
That means you were doing it right.
Exactly. So I mean, the Thistle Fleet captain hated it because we branded our fleet as providing value separate or in addition to or an enhanced value more than what the club offered, and I stand by it. I think it's really smart. It's a political challenge, but everything. But what we do, for instance, is we have this great Wednesday night program where we started offering coordinated sailing programs where all people have to do is sign up and get on a boat, and it's developed into this great crew pipeline. And then what we do is we don't force you to join our fleet, which requires you to become a sustaining member of FSSA. Our boat owners are already batting 100%, but we got a group of 50 sailors. So we're saying, how do we get them to join FSSA rather than just getting the benefits of everything that we're putting out? So one creative thing that we did is we made it clear to them that, you know what, if you want to sign up, we'll put you on a boat. We're not going to force you to do anything, but if an FSSA member signs up and we don't have enough seats, we're going to give them seating preference. So we're not excluding them, but at the same time, we're constantly reminding people that we have value in FSSA members. It's been a nice creative thing. Last year, we took it to a new level, and I promote myself as a U.S. Sailing Certified Instructor because the rest of the club isn't doing that yet. And so if they join the fleet, I will provide them a structured learning path. Now, the truth is we've already been monitoring the development of our fleet members anyway. It's like getting a free T-shirt for eating the Buffalo Wing Challenge. You might do it anyway, but if you get a T-shirt, so we've craftily marketed U.S. sailing certification as a bonus to joining the fleet, and just the basic one Because if you buy a boat, you know darn well that we're going to take care of you every step of the way, from rigging to tuning, everything else. But tomorrow I'm going to put I think 3 FSSA applications of people who don't own boats, because we offered that, and these are things that we've already done, but just found ways to market our fleet as providing value, because we've just been doing a poor job of not articulating that in our fleet. And people have recognized that we're special in terms of a group and camaraderie. We're the best sailors in our club or in our fleet. We're always willing to help, but we found some creative ways of marketing that benefit without saying pay or go away, and it's working. So I think I'm gonna my goal is to get probably 10 FSA members, in addition to all of our boat owners, in addition to what we already have, just by offering these programs, which are in essence things we've already been doing for the past 10 years. And it's just been a little bit of a marketing twist. So that's all I have to add.
Appreciate that, Eric. Sorry I couldn't miss your thing yesterday, but I had to shape or warp young minds.
If I could also, one of the things the snipe class used to do, we used to, and this is going back a while, so I don't know if they still do it or not, but I remember at the beginning of every season, I believe, if it wasn't down to the club level, it was definitely at the district level. The district governors would get a list of all of the previously registered members to aid them in going out and doing what you were talking about before, picking the phone up and going, hey, it's been October since I've seen you. And 2 months after the season started, they would get that list that says, here's the members that haven't rejoined. I don't know if there's a way to get our management team to be able to give us those lists and be proactive in saying, here's your phone number, here's the previous contact info we had. They haven't joined again, and even divvy that up down to the fleet level to allow us to say, okay, it's one thing for us to get together at our spring meeting and everybody goes, yay, I paid my FSSA dues. And then I don't really know if that's true or not, yes, I guess from a local regatta standpoint, we don't really verify or check, which I guess we should be doing on a regular basis. But if there was something that could be proactive to send down to us to help us make that contact, I'd certainly be willing to do it at the club level, to know who in the Cowan Lake Arena has not, yet up their dues every year. There's something else to consider.
And Bruce, I think there's a way to get, and there may be some timing things in the data, but there's a way to make the call that says, Bruce is a deadbeat, why hadn't you paid, versus how you doing, Bruce?
Yeah. I mean,
So Bruce,
yes, ma'am.
the district governors get a report once a month, as does the executive committee, of what the current membership is, and it shows everybody who hasn't joined. And I think we asked Bill Dunham, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we approved Courtney starting to send that to the fleet captains monthly as well, instead of just once
Yes,
a
we
year.
did.
So I think
We did
that will
approve
help
that.
if they're getting their list once a month rather than once a year.
And what
They'll
we
know every month who's joined and who hasn't.
what we may need to do, Diane, I think Bruce is on the right point. We can send someone a big old Excel file and they won't know what to do with it. But if you say, here's your list, you sort it, or what it is and what you can go do with it. But Bruce, since you have that thought, why don't you and I ponder some script that goes with that? I'll write something, you can tell me why it's bad.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing, just in thinking through that, our current fleet member, our current fleet captain, she's a great person, active in the fleet, enjoys sailing. I'm not so sure she's the aggressive type that would take information and feel comfortable going and saying, even on a colloquial type of conversational basis, hey, by the way, I noticed you haven't joined FSSA. So I wonder if there's even a dual fold way to give somebody, like myself, I'm not fleet captain here at Cowan, but obviously I wouldn't mind any time having a beer with somebody and going, hey, dude, I noticed you haven't paid your FSA dues. You're going to join this year, where she might not. So I don't know if there's.
We can surreptitiously get you one, and I think you raise a good point. You know, everybody has different skills, and there may be somebody that's a good fleet captain, but not necessarily the kind of person who's comfortable making those phone calls. And then there's some people who put one of these headsets on and talk all day.
And again, she's not. Unfortunately, when we're picking our grassroots fleet captain, she's not a traveler. So she's not enjoying or she's not experiencing class, from the broader family perspective of the outreaching, broader family. So yes, those aspects of what we're thinking may be happening need to be maybe modified in a way that we become a little more aggressive.
And the way I'm thinking through what you just suggested, Bruce, is the point in my life I would have been terrified about dialing for dollars. Now it's kind of like it's sailing. I can do this. But there's probably somebody in a fleet that likes doing that sort of stuff, and others who hate it.
But I think that's where, and we're talking about it at our club level. Members who haven't rejoined, we're not necessarily looking at it because there's a difference, and there's two separate categories. Driving the financial side of the fleet and having those dollars, but that really is an extension, or has to be extended through to the participation aspect in our mind. It's one thing to have a club member who says, yeah, okay, I'll pay my dues in April, and then we never see their boat on the water. And we struggle with again, making that a part of the program as opposed to just collecting dollars for memberships.
Yeah, and that's what I think the advantage of what Eric suggested. It's more a community thing, and the financials are a measure you got it right. That's the way I look at it.
And just to say, I need to drop from this meeting, switch to another, and I'll either email you, Jim, or call you to
Bat it around.
ideas. Thanks.
Yeah, because the idea here was to stimulate discussion.
Great.
I see Bruce's beer I assume that's beer. Getting a little low. Anybody else have anything? Brian, since I called on you earlier, did you have anything you want to say, or you need to go ahead too?
No, I mean, I'm happy to share a few thoughts, because obviously we've been through this with a bunch of different classes, and all the points like Eric's and Bruce's are all really good. I think that when you start talking about connecting with people, if you start relying on the local level, like Bruce is trying to point out, you're probably going to spin your wheels a little bit, whether it's a district governor or a fleet captain. It's usually you're grabbing somebody who, they missed a meeting, and next thing you know, they're a fleet captain. So, my suggestion, based on what I'm listening to you a little bit, is that, there's probably 10 people in the class who would be really good at going through a list, breaking it up. I mean, there can't be 900 people that you're missing. There's probably 300 or 400 or 500 people, and they'd appreciate a call from Jim Leggett or Bill Dunham or somebody, just check it in, say, do you still have your boat? And if you broke that up between 10 or 15 people and had like a little bit of a sales kind of thing, it becomes much more manageable and tolerable. And not only that, you have more control over it. I think if you dump a list, like Bruce was saying, on the local fleet captain and say, hey, you need to reach out to these people, it won't happen.
Some will do it and some won't. I like this idea.
Yeah, so
When I became president, that particular year, became president in June, and there were 300 people who had not joined from the previous year. So I know this is really crazy, but I picked up a phone and I called every single one of them myself. That was crazy, but you know what? I did it. And people did appreciate the personal touch. And 75 of those people rejoined. 50 of them had sold their boats and they weren't part of the class anymore. 2 of those people I got to join as associate members. So at least they stayed involved in the class. And then a few people had died. I felt bad about that, but at least I took the time to reach out. So I think Brian's right. And if you break it down and let's say there's 200 people who haven't rejoined. If you gave that list 10 or 20 people to, a group of people, each give them 10 or 20 people to call. It's more manageable, and people do enjoy the personal touch. But let me give you one warning. I had one fleet captain who came up to me and told me that I had a nerve calling his people without his permission. So I thought, well, as the president of the class, I didn't, probably didn't, and I don't think anybody was hurt by that. But I felt like saying to him, if you had done your job, I wouldn't have had to call these people. But I didn't.
Yeah, the other thing, Diane, I think the class owns the class. I mean, you have ownership of the class, and the class has put the responsibility of managing that in the executive committee's hands. And so, when you're in a situation where you're trying to connect, I think the point you made where you found 50 people who sold their boats or whatever, that's incredibly useful information for the class. It's not something you can't get unless you go and grab that. So I think that's pretty important. I mean, I'm not embarrassed. Your 1989 commercial. I was working at North. I'd been there for a couple of years, and we sat through the Lightning Yearbook. This is back in 1989, before internet or anything else like that. And Ched Proctor, myself, and Jody Lutz, in the evenings over 2 months, called everybody in the Lightning class. We went through the yearbook, hunted their names down, and made phone calls every night as we sat in our offices just to connect with people. Now, it's a different thing. I was trying to make connections and sell a product, but so are you guys. I mean, we're all trying to sell a product. We're trying to sell the class. We're trying to sell, camaraderie and stuff. So, I think if you come up with a list of over the past 3 years of people who've stepped away from the class, at least you'd be able to have a better understanding. And I wouldn't worry about that one fleet captain who would be ticked off about it. I'd actually appreciate the opportunity to engage them, and say, hey, this is great. Next time I'm going to get you to call next 20 people. I'm glad you're excited about helping.
Glad I stepped up. But I like this idea because, and I think what Brian has pointed out to us is, and that's something I'm struggling with, is I think some of it happens at the local level, some of it happens at the association level. I think we've concluded here it happens at the personal level, and we just have to figure out how to do that and how we have to support the people dialing for dollars.
All right. So, can I just bring up two quick things? I know you're trying to wrap up the call, and one of them is that, to Eric's point about what they've done in Clinton Lake, which I think is, again, an incredible thing. It's what they do there may not sell in Davis Island, or won't sell in Texas, or won't sell in Maryland, because it just, everybody's different in how they approach things. And so, it takes such a grassroots effort to do what Eric's done in Clinton Lake. And that's, a little bit of the association's challenges, especially with a rotating board, is finding the right people in that area who are going to be a grassroots church. I can't, I see Diane and Greg and what they've done for so many years for the class, and just, blood, sweat, and tears. And those people don't grow on trees. It's very hard to find somebody who's going to put that kind of effort in, Eric and all these guys. So, and usually what ends up happening is the fuse burns out, and it's hard to keep it burning for a really long time. So you kind of catch those people when you can, try to light the fire and hope it kind of spreads a little bit further. The last thing I want to bring up, because I've always overextended my time, is I'd really like the class to make an effort into doing something about junior sailing. I think we're missing the boat with the Flying Scot insofar as how forgiving it is, how simplistic it is to compete in, and putting junior sailors in an opportunity to go and do it. We had a great Sears Cup a few years ago in Tom's River, and the kids did great with the boat. I'd be happy to be involved with the discussion insofar as how we can create more of a blooming type of junior program. And by that, my kid's 20, how old a kid? I don't know, 20 years old. He loves sailing the Flying Scot and me, but once it was over, there was no connection. There were no other kids his age, and that's, I'll be honest with you, he's gravitated to the Lightning because he goes and sails the junior worlds of the Lightning. He makes these relationships with these kids. They have these group chats with 40 kids in the Lightning, and they have a culture, and they're going to build that through over the next 10 or 15 years. And granted, they're going to lose some of them because they're going to go do whatever they're going to do when they're 25 or 28 and try to pay their student loans, but they'll come back. So I would really, I don't have the answer, but I know Greg and myself and Zeke would be really excited about trying to help at least have a discussion about a path to create a better type of junior program. So
And Brian,
I'm off my soapbox.
to Brian's point, we have 2 junior members last year in the category.
Yeah, the path right now, again, I mean, I unfortunately compare it to the Lightning, and you know, and that's not the worst model to use, to be honest with you. And we've missed the boat somewhere. You know, it would have been, it's too bad, you know, Courtney and Brian and a whole bunch of these kids that, you know, they didn't create a bond around sailing Flying Scots for a long time. So, you know, the Egan's and stuff, they kind of grew in, and that's the GYA, and I get it. It's a little bit different, but boy, you know, when I started doing this in the early 90s, late 80s, there was definitely a lot more younger people, and I'd just be interested in whether the board would, or the class would be interested in kind of restructuring how we look at junior sailing, and not necessarily as a recreational or a community type program, but more keeping the racing kids in it. So anyway, soapbox, you guys.
No, Brian, I think that's not a bad soapbox. And two, time flies. I can't remember the last time we were having conversation about NACS when I had it in Sandusky. So what year was that, everybody? But a large part of our conversation around that, we did not have a juniors race because we couldn't attract the juniors. And part of that, if I remember correctly, and I have to go back and look at my notes, was how does the class handle membership when it comes to junior programs? You had to be a member, you had to be a junior member, again, part of my suggestion to the board is to look at the levels or the restrictiveness of membership when it comes to attracting. You know, do we really need to have a junior member be a member of the class to participate in a national event at that caliber? Or is it more advantageous to us to say, you know, come and compete, get a boat, put it on the line, and we're going not to worry so much about the membership aspect as opposed to getting you involved in the class in some way that doesn't involve that type of aspect. And again, I apologize, I don't remember all of the.
Yeah, no, there's definitely I mean, my son wanted to do the juniors. I was going to sail with him and stuff, and even I wasn't that excited about that. I've always felt the junior event should have all juniors in the boat and really, you know, push them off the dock and let them go sailing. But at that point, that's what the rules were. And, you know, with them, I know Charles, I talked to him a little bit about it, trying to create a different type of venue for it. But anyway, it's a different subject. But if you're talking about creating a foundation and having, you know, kids get into young adults, 14 to 22, being part of a culture that they're going to grow through it, you have to start somewhere. And I don't think right now the Scott class is set up that great for that. I think that historically the numbers say it's not. And it just might be something we might want to consider over the next 18 months is creating a path.
You got to make it easy, and you got to make it advantageous for them to come in and say, yeah, I'm going to jump in a boat and go do this. And hopefully they like it enough to say, wow, I want to come back to it.
I'm culturally different. I'm involved in the industry and everything else like that. But I remember having a conversation and saying, you know, someone said, well, you know, we're going to get these 10, you know, boats full of college hotshots going to come in and they're going to take our trophies. And I'm like, we're going to get 10 juniors to sail the junior next. I'm like, great. I'm like, yeah, I mean, here's my boat, go, you know? And so I just look at it as a marketing opportunity for the class. Anyway, that's a different topic. I understand it gets off the, you know, let's get the $35, $50, $75 for each membership. And that's something we can go do. But
it's really not, Brian, because again, it's one thing to talk about the dollars, but again, we struggle at the club level. How do we get our club membership money, but how do we protect that money by having the involvement year over year over year? You can get somebody to sign up for us for $50 for 1 year and go, okay, it's $50. I'll spend that on a night out. But if you're not involving them, if you're not getting the kids, if you're not getting the adults excited about remaining to Jim's slide that shows, you know, have you been involved for 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the class? You got to get that $50 and you got to get them active and encouraged in the fleet and the class for years over years.
to Bruce's point, I have a friend who's a priest, and every time they get a new member, their first immediate goal is, well, we like you there at the Sunday service, but we want your butt in the Sunday school class, because then you get involved, and then you may be there for 50 years.
Hey, Jim, one more thought. Going back, that's great on the youth sailing. I have to digest that. I have no idea how we make youth sailing work at Clinton Lake, but I'd love to figure out how to make a go at it. But I became the membership for CLSA this year, and the first thing that I did is I went back and contacted everyone who didn't renew over the past 3 years, and I recovered a whole bunch of, not a whole bunch, I'm exaggerating, a handful. And those people that I recovered, the one thing that they kept on saying was, yeah, I meant to renew last year. I got my bill. I got the email notification, and then I forgot about it. Then I just kind of forgot about it. And then I didn't do it. And so I wonder if I pay my bill on time. So I don't know if we send out, hey, by the way, you haven't paid your bill yet, or if we assume that if they don't get reminders if they don't renew 1 year because they forgot to pay or didn't do a good job, do we not contact them the following year because we assume they're no longer members?
And Eric, to your point, I'm the guy, when I get an electronic bill, I'll put a flag in Outlook that will remind me to pay it. I'm guessing you and I are the outliers here.
If my wife doesn't remind me, I'm not going to do anything.
I think, anybody have anything else? Because we've got some ribs from our caterer turned home delivery guy. Brian, why don't you remind folks about what you and Greg are doing on Saturday?
So first of all, it's Zeke and Greg, and I'm just I'm just a.
You're mission control.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can't put myself anywhere in that category. But this is one thing our group has been doing, and Eric's actually given us a lot of opportunity to use some pretty useful videos. So thank you, Eric, personally, for kind of supporting the educational part of this. But we've been thinking about this for a long time, and it took a pandemic for us to find enough time to go do this kind of stuff. And the focus is on education and basically creating an environment that we can get together and have discussions. And so they've been working okay. Greg and I have been working all day today, actually, on this Saturdays, and we're getting about 260 people listening in, which is, I don't think, horrible. I think it's pretty good. It's very much on level to what we're getting. We're getting on the Scott class the same we're getting in the J70 class insofar as people listening in. So it's pretty impressive. But the goal is just to continue to be engaged. And Diane's helped a lot getting the word out insofar as making sure people know about it. And I think we're engaging people that might be watching Facebook and have a flying Scott but aren't involved in the class. So I've been trying to make sure that people understand the involvement of the class and the raffles and all that stuff. I could probably I'll work a little bit more on Saturday about what you guys want to promote for the class. It's also possible for us to have somebody come in and kind of be do a little guest appearance and maybe throw a little commercial in for the class. We're happy to do that this Saturday if somebody wants to go do that. But I think the opportunity is you'll end up reaching 250, 260 people. And if 15 of them haven't been members and they're the opportunity of reach out to somebody, it might be something worthwhile if you guys are interested. It has to be, like Bruce was saying earlier, it has to be the right person. It has to be the salesperson, the happy-go-lucky, kind of Greg Fisherish kind of thing. But anyway, it's something that we'd be more than happy to have someone in the class come on and say, hey, don't forget to join your class. This is what you get out of it. So
I'll do it if no one else wants to. And Diane, shark me if I want to talk about monetary policy.
No, Jim, we've had somebody good at this.
That's why I'm challenging folks. I'll do it if no one else wants to.
Anyway, if you guys want to have that chat with an email and stuff like that, we'll definitely be able to sort that out. We're working on we're getting better at these Zoom things. I'm doing literally probably 40 of them right now with different classes and figuring out how to make it safe and secure as possible. And anyway, but that might be something that would be fun for someone in the class to wave the flag and make a sales pitch. I mean, I tried to do it a little bit. I actually asked Diane the other day, did we get any kind of bump with memberships? And I don't think we got a huge bump, but I think at least people were aware of it, and they're going to get the message again. So.
And it's one of those things, to your point, Brian, you have to keep telling them over and over again, because if you look at all the studies on that, most people don't buy anything on the first impression.
Yeah, well, I think, real quick, I was just thinking that, I wonder if the class, if we could record like Greg and Zeke doing a little thing about joining the class and then email it out to people that you haven't heard from in 2 or 3 years, and just say, hey, this is Greg Fisher and Zeke, this other thing. I don't have my script in front of me, but I guess my point is it might be something that say, oh, I sailed against Greg. Oh, membership, that's a good idea. I still got my boat. It's just something different that the class might want to try that costs nothing. So
another few minutes to script you guys and try to push the button.
Right.
All right, anybody got anything else? Brian, did I interrupt you? Brian, were you done, or did I talk over you?
Oh, no, you're good. I expect you to talk over me, so.
Like I say, we got ribs coming. Knowing this guy, the way he cooks are really, really good. So hearing no objections, I appreciate everybody's time. I think what we'll do is we'll figure out some interval to do this. Like I said, the purpose of this was, I think I know the problem. I don't know the solution, but let's keep working at it. And then hopefully what I do while I have this chair is I leave this particular function in a little better shape than I found it. Not that it wasn't in bad shape, but if I can make it a little better, I think I did better. All right. Appreciate everybody's time. Have a good evening. Stay safe. And hopefully see everybody in the real world sooner rather than later. Take care, gang. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.